welcome you all. I want to welcome you all to our Wednesday webinar today, Cultivate the 5 Key Attributes of Effective Leadership. And this is obviously a very important topic because in this day and age, talent management has become increasingly the #1 issue, I think, for major companies. So let me just go through the agenda. We're going to talk about what is leadership and management and what are some of the key challenges people are facing. We're going to go through then what are the 5 attributes. We put them all into C's today: clarity of purpose, communication excellence, commitment to a leadership theme, courage of convictions, and continuity and sustainability. And then we're going to give you a next steps on how to cultivate these leaders. For those of you who are new to our system, I do a lot of work with leaders of all kinds of companies, including public officials, and a lot of the experiences working with them in a coaching practice, Vistage New York, Leader Connections, Leader Solutions TV, etc. And our goal today is to bring some of our findings, some of what we think are more interesting issues to everyone's attention, so you can consider them as you start cultivating some of your best people in the company to become great leaders. So I like to always start off, and you can tell I'm a teacher because I like to start off with definitions. So let's define what is leadership. Leadership is the process by which you influence group members toward the achievement of its goals, in which the members view the influence as legitimate. So we've kind of qualified the area. We're looking for legitimate achievement of goals by the members where you're influencing them as your leader. Now that separates out in that definition, obviously, good and bad leaders. We're focusing on good, but also separates out leaders from management. See, leaders, in their goal to influence, are choosing the direction for the things people should do. They're creating the vision of a company and the mission of a company. They're setting the values and underwriting the culture of a company. Those are the main responsibilities of a leader. So what they're doing is planning where to go. The managers are the executionists. They're getting the things done right. If these are the things we need to do to create a system and a culture that's going to be very supportive of people, then this is how we do it, and we're going to do it this way. So they're focusing mostly on implementation and execution. Most people wear both hats, okay? They are managers of other people and tasks and responsibilities, but they're also a leader of a group, a team that they're taking somewhere. From that perspective, and it's the one that we like to adopt here, leaders are everywhere and they impact on everyone. So if you think of yourself, the question is, how do I influence people who are below me, that are my subordinates, but it's also how do I manage my boss so that he or she and I can get the most that we're trying to do. And how do I influence my peers, both within my group and outside my group, to make a difference. A classic example of management of this leadership approach is a president that I was coaching this morning, and as we were going over it, she'd been appointed by the CEO of this set of companies to take on this job, and there are a number of people in the company that she thinks just their time has come. They're no longer as productive as they should be in the company, and for her to achieve her goals for which she's been hired, she's going to have to transition some of these people out of their jobs and hire some new people. Her immediate supervisor, her manager, if you want to think of it that way, the CEO, has an emotional attachment with some of these people and is much more reluctant, much less willing to let go of some of these people because they've had some institutional impact. But after 20 years, sometimes that changes, and that's really the key to a great leader, is to understand you're going to have to manage up, and in this case help her boss understand time has come for some people to go, because if you're not, she's going to spend her entire life micromanaging the difficult situations they're putting new people into and hurting the company. In essence, then, what you're really finding is that a leader is faced with a really tough question. Why should I follow you? That's a question everybody who's working with them, the manager, the subordinate, the peers, it's always the same question. Why should I follow you? What are you doing to project to me that you're a leader, you know what you're doing, and you're competent and confident that you're doing it? And our view of that is that you have to understand there are 3 key parts to leadership. It's a full commitment. It's a head concept, meaning it's planning, it's thinking, it's planning the direction and communicating it to all the people. It's also energizing and mobilizing people. It's dealing with passion. It's getting people to understand where you're going and why it's important. And it also means you're demonstrating courage. You're taking the hard decisions. You're focusing on maintaining your integrity for whatever it is you do. If you're, I teach at Baruch, and I teach business strategy courses morning and evening, and I tell my people all the time the greatest way to learn what's happening is just read what's happening in newspapers. As CEOs in the last week have been faced with $2.2 billion losses, or have resumes that demonstrate a problem with integrity and are false and need to be moved around. So the question becomes, with leadership, is it a full commitment? Is it involving all three components? Because if you can, then that's the reason people can say, I will follow you, because they now have confidence in your competence and your passion. That's increasingly important because the world is changing, and this is the really important part. Leadership issues have been around since day one. When Noah had to build his ark and he had people helping him, he had to become a great leader, inspire people that it would take years and years to build this ark, and that at some point it would have some value, and people would laugh at him and doubt him, but he had the guts to continue it. He had his head and heart in the right place, and therefore he was able to keep going. So there are critical parts to leadership that are always there. But what's important to understand is today the global challenges are even larger than before. Our pace is faster, our needs are quicker, and therefore we need to look at it. So as Thomas Friedman told us over a decade ago, the world is flat. We need to now view the entire world as being part of our playground, things that we're going to influence people on, things that we're going to be leaders with. It is a flat world. What you say in New York with a press release is instantaneously known everywhere on the four corners of the planet. The economic stagnations, I'm using that word rather than calling it recession, that we've just gone through, but we're right now in some countries, our growth rate of under 3% here in the United States and elsewhere raised the question of where do we go next? What are the seismic changes that we're not actually seeing because the net is almost no growth rate? If you take a look, as we do at Vistage, Vistage is a group that I have the privilege of chairing a local group with, has 15,000 CEOs around the country in 15 other countries, and they're constantly taking an economic temperature to find out how people think today the economy is, what's their projection 6 months, a year from now, and try to understand how that's going to affect their business, both locally, both globally, in terms of supply chain, in terms of customers. And in this world where things are moving up and down, gyrating, but the net looks like a stagnation, it's focusing past the stagnation stage to the gyrations, really trying to master what it's about. We're in a world of security issues. The 9/11 changed the way people looked at the world. I do a lot of work with interns, and when I take them to buildings, I remark to them that many of the same buildings we're going into now, down on Wall Street especially, I used to go into all the time as I visited my clients, and you literally just walked in. Today it's a 10-minute security process. It's changed it. It's created industries, and we need to understand it. There are global power shifts. 25 years ago, I'm not too sure many people really understood the power that China would have both economically and in terms of its security capabilities and its influence on the world stage. Clearly, those shifts have changed. We now have issues that are short-term. Iran, it's, for example, Afghanistan, Pakistan, a number of different countries, and longer-term ones in terms of where is the balance of power. Putin is back in command in Russia. What changes will that make? We watch our demographic changes. Millennials are in the workforce, have a different set of needs than the baby boom generation. But interestingly, both are in there, and both are interacting with one another and need to learn how to work with one another. We have greater diversity in the workforce than we have ever had before in terms of customs, language, generations, belief systems, the value of the company. All of these present different challenges for different people within a company, and you as a leader have to be sensitive to them so that you can work with the different departments and the heads of those departments to be able to make the differences that you're trying to make. This is the part of the great challenge. And the challenges just keep continuing. Today we have a virtual workforce. We're in Manhattan. And we look after 9/11 at the reconstruction and new space going up. But as I do it, I watch the real estate market, because increasingly people are working virtually. What used to be corner offices for executives now are just bullpens where people come, spaces where people work. People are working from home many days a week. There's no such thing as a vacation without a BlackBerry or the iPhone accompanying you to help deal with an issue. It's a world of instant communications. When you sneeze here in New York, they hear about it in whatever country you sneezed in relationship to. Technology keeps changing, and Clayton Christensen's concept of the innovator's dilemma doesn't change. It's still there, and it keeps changing in different ways. What do you do? Just last night I was with a group focusing on an IT situation, and the question was, what do we do with our servers for our telecommunication systems? And one of them said, well, we're going to maintain separate ones for different ones. And they said, well, how many people still are on the BlackBerry? Turned out the number was down to 14. I mean, it was just once a totally BlackBerry situation. Now it isn't. That changes how you're going to do it. It's constantly changing and moving. And one of the most interesting ones for us, and for those of you who are going to be with us next week, it's the topic I'm going to deal with, which is leading the innovative organization, how to unleash and sustain creativity, is how do you do that in a company? Every single year for the last, I think, decade, every other year for the last over a decade, IBM has done a study of over 1,500 leaders. And what they've done is they've asked them, what are the most pressing issues that you face? And almost every survey that they did always found that the number one issue for people was innovation. How do we get our people to be more innovative? How do we incorporate the innovation? How do we tap it in an effective way? This year, or it's actually 2011 when they did the most recent study, the results for the first time were different. Innovation's still important, don't worry, it's number two. But number one is becoming even more important, which is what actually led to the creation of today's presentation and my public speeches on this area in leadership. People are beginning to realize, the key leaders, that incremental change isn't sufficient anymore. As the world changes so dramatically, it's a game changer, and that the companies have to rethink what they do. Just like Fortune 500 companies, one just last week announced it's moving its headquarters in the United States to Singapore to be closer to all of its outports in Asia. Incremental change isn't going to make it. They've got to make massive changes to do it. And what's really interesting, as I said, what led to this presentation, is that the study found that over half believe they're not prepared to handle the complexity. We're all juggling so many things. We've never been trained to do that. We're not sure what the priorities are. We're doing the best we can, but that may not be good enough. And so today, our key message for you is, as you cultivate great leaders, you want to fill in all the major categories of issues that we're going to talk about that affect all leaders probably over time, but also this ability now to handle complexity, because it is a whole new level. So with that, let's turn to the solution of how to solve some of these problems, the attributes, the 5 C's as I mentioned them, and let us begin with the first one, the clarity of purpose. What's critical here, and for those of you who are leaders of major organizations, is to really understand these 4 critical areas. What's the vision of a company? Where is it going? What's the vision of it? Think about the great vision that John F. Kennedy gave America in 1961 as America had slipped to number 2 in the space race. And he said, our mission is to be able to send a man to the moon and return him safely. Okay? His vision was America as being the leading country in space and staying there forever, leading to the creation of NASA. So the vision generates a mission and creates a form, in this case an organization, that's able to do it. Every morning we have a mission of what we're going to perform. What is the impact we're going to have on the people we work with, on our customers, on our investors, our stakeholders. And we tie that into the vision of where we want to see our company in the future. We have to understand clearly in this purpose, what are our values? What do we stand for? And what's really important in this is an area that I'm going to talk about today a little bit more on, is the issue of behavioral values. In other words, operationalizing these values. There is a new tool out there. It's called Evaluate to Win, and actually I'm now a certified consultant, and you can see this on our website at the end, eval2win.com, where we're for the first time introducing it. is that there's a new wonderful tool out there that another Vistage member in another city has created, and he's growing his company at a 20% rate per year for the last 5 years. And part of it in this toolkit is starting at the top of the company and cascading down a clear understanding of the culture and aligning everybody within that culture toward achieving the vision, the mission, the operationalizing of the values and the specific goals that they have. So you end silos, and what you do is you have people all coordinating, focusing on what leader traits are necessary today to accomplish the values and the goals that you've set for the company so you can all achieve the mission, and he's done it. And actually, one of the people we'll refer to later on in this presentation, Jack Welch, is now involved and has called this the best business management system I've ever seen. It's why we're now offering that tool to companies we work with, because it's an actual cloud-based tool. It's relatively inexpensive to use, but then allows for the conversations between leaders and the members of their team to constantly define what are our values today and how do we proceed and how do we improve in performance related to them. So it's alignment, culture, performance, and leadership all rolled into one. And to do that, you need to be focused. Steve Jobs is a hero of mine, always has been, and for many people, I'm sure. And one of the things that's really great about his quotes, and there's so many of them, is this one, because this is one that I like to identify with. Many people want to do too many things. We multitask too much. And his statement is that one of the things he's most proud of is that he has turned things down. It's not doing everything. When he came back, if you read Walter Isaacson's biography in 1997, his first step to keep Apple alive was to cut the range of products in the product line. And then he said, I'm not running out to do a new product or service. My goal is really very simple, to wait for the next best thing and then figure out where that's going to take us and focus around it. And that was what he did with the entire iPad, iPhone, iPods, etc. So focusing and maintaining that singularity of focus is critical to making clarity of purpose real. Second part's communication. As you know, Presentation Excellence is the parent company behind Webinar Excellence, and actually the new group of 5 companies we've now called the Presentation Excellence Group. It's all about excellent communications. We just finished a wonderful presentation for Wall Street one-to-one with investors and companies talking to each other and trying to raise money, and making the point that a great presentation is really a great conversation. And what you need to do if you're going to be an effective leader is always be communicating, because people have to fill in the gaps on their own, and if they don't know where you want them to go, they can't achieve the goals that you've set for their direction. You communicate across all media. That means it's content, what it is people need to know today, what they need to know tomorrow, what they need to know the day after. What's the style? What's the format in which you present it? This particular conference allowed companies for the time, public companies, to talk to investors on a speed dating system where they only met for 5 minutes, and I was the moderator of a panel and a coach for many of these people on how to get the 38 slides down to something they could communicate effectively in 4.5 minutes. So I had half a minute for the pleasantries before the bell rang, and they moved to the next set of investors. It's the style that's very important in how you're doing it, communicating it one-to-one no matter how large the audience is. It's the behaviors. Remember, we need to be consistent. Actions do speak louder than words. In a culture, it's the symbols that we use. The employee of the month, rewarding people for going out of their way, for being proactive. It's all of those things. It's the norms that operate in the company. When a company says, like Nordstrom, one of the most important values we have in our company is customer service, that we do whatever we can for the customers so they always know we're there. And then you listen to their stories. It's part of their culture. Stories like a woman is at the counter and she leaves her wallet there, and she gets in the cab. She leaves her passport there, and she leaves, and she had mentioned she's going to the airport to travel to Europe, and the clerk who's there notices it, and there's no real way to reach the person, so she just turns to someone and says, listen, I'm going to go grab a cab and try to get down there and give it to her before she gets on the plane, because without it she probably can't get on the plane. And she gets up and she does it, and she runs and she meets the client and gives it to her, who's obviously very, very thankful. What makes that such a great story is, remember, she didn't have to go through 13 people and get 14 approvals to be able to go out and do this for this client, who clearly will use Nordstrom over and over again. Actions do speak louder than words. In doing that, keep in mind that the goal is always connecting. It's not getting information through a channel, which was the old way we used to think about it. It's using the channel to connect. It's all about the logic and emotions, the rationality and the gut feeling you get from doing that. And to understand that when you're doing it, we communicate not just across medium, but that we process information when we're getting it in different ways. So neurolinguistic programming, NLP, focuses on 3 ways in which we process information. Some of us see it very clearly. Some of us are auditory. We hear the information that we're hearing. And some people are kinesthetic. They feel it, okay? They feel your pain, for example. So nothing's more important, as Gerald Ford once said, than the ability to communicate effectively, because without it, there's that gap, there's no connectivity, and leadership can't take you to the next level. But the key is to understand what's your style and what's their style. And for those of you who've done DISC and Myers-Briggs, you understand there are many different styles. Our audiences have, understanding your personality style and that of the team you're working with, and solving it and relating the two is one of the critical things I think coaches, such as my team at Vistage, will work with the members, because there's very often a gap. I see it visually, you hear it, so the result is, as I show you all the evidence, you're not processing at the same level I am, and so there's a mismatch. We don't want that. And then when you have your information and you want to present a compelling case, you order and structure it in a way to do that well, but then what you need to understand is you need to be persuasive. And in the science of social psychology, it's one of my areas of specialty, it's called influence today. How do you influence people? How do you persuade people? And that means understanding that what you're doing is combining 3 things: logic, emotion, and power. You use whichever is appropriate at the time it's there. So logic may be the reason for doing this program, but you don't want to miss out on it. That's the emotion behind it. It's the risk of not getting it, the opportunity cost that may be high. That's it. And if you're Donald Trump and you're sitting at something and you know you have power, you can clearly use power. You don't want to focus just on one. You want to use a balance of them when you have them. Some of the more powerful strategies that people use, and we recommend using often, is reciprocity. You first give and then receive. That's the best way to connect with somebody. The second part is to reverse the risk. We see that all the time, your money back guarantee. Take it on 30 days, and if you're not pleased with it, you return it and you owe us nothing. That gives you confidence in them. People wouldn't do that all the time if they didn't believe it's going to work for them. And finally, the concept of social proof, third-party testimonials. That adds credibility, and it's a critical strategy that's useful because it persuades people. If everyone else is buying in this product, there must be something to it. If I don't know what it is, I would find it. Keeping in mind that there's this balance of logic and emotion is very important. In 1996, Kahneman and his team of behavioral economists did studies, and they won the Nobel Prize for determining that people would rather avert a risk than focus on gaining some kind of attainment. And so given choice situations, risk aversion usually wins out. Risk aversion, again, is all emotional. Gain attainment would be, in many cases, more logical. That brings us to our third point, a third of 5 that we said we would spend time with you today on. And this is the commit to a leadership theme. One of the things that's real important as I work with companies for decades is to recognize the issues that the leaders face change. The team's focus change. Sometimes internal, sometimes external. Sometimes it's marketing, sometimes it's sales, sometimes it's technology, sometimes it's talent management. Sometimes it's global expansion, sometimes it's internal mergers and acquisitions. And the key is for leaders to be able to handle that, but to understand that generally at any given period of time there's a theme that's driving you where you are. So for example, with Jack Welch, when he first came to General Electric, they were not doing very well. He needed to refocus them, and as many of you may know or remember, his first thing was to let go of close to 20,000 people, and he got the nickname Neutron Jack for just letting go of a lot of people. But in doing it, he was able to keep the best people there, get them to focus on the fields in which this company could succeed, and then using the mantra, we're going to be only number 1 and 2 in any industry we have, he focused them on that and produced record growth during the rest of his administration when he was at the GE there. When Jeff Immelt took it over, he had a different goal. His goal was to continue the process under a new leader to show that that the company was as strong as it was and it could do what it needed to do without necessarily having Jack at the helm. IBM's another example. When Thomas Watson first started it, it was a computer hardware company. And when it came to computers, people would focus in on what great computing capabilities they had, but they made their money through hardware. In the 1980 era, they introduced the PC, actually got a trademark on that, and introduced a version of Windows called OS2 as a way of showing it could be done, trying to pull together the mainframe, the mini, and the PC, and integrating all of this and changing the way in which we looked at the tools we worked with. And yet by 2000, they dropped it. Lenovo bought their PC business and their laptops, and what they decided to do is focus on using computing power as a service to help solve really important issues for companies, governments, etc. And this company has just kept growing, if you take a look at its growth rate over the last several years, by transforming itself with a new theme. So even within the same company, leaders have to focus on different themes at different times, and you need to do that. And we have a new company, it's part of the Presentation Excellence Group, called Commanding Strategies, in which what we do is we help companies figure out what their strategies are 3-5 years going forward, and then working backwards to currently the next 6 months, what they need to do to get there step by step in this process. And we do that by facilitating leadership advances. We don't believe management should retreat, so we call them strategic leadership advances, to think it through, to plan it out, to go forward, and then to work backwards, as Covey would say, to be able to figure out what do I have to do to get where I'm trying to get to. That's the key for what they're doing. So as you look at a company, maybe you're building yours, you're looking for a job in someone else's, or making an investment, you have to ask the question, what is the current theme that they're working on? Because each one has something different. So Zappos, for example, starts off, if you think about it, with an innovation. Hey, listen, you know what? We can lose a little money on returning shoes, but we can this way solve a problem, which is how do I try on a shoe virtually? The answer is we don't. We let them take the shoes. They can buy as many as they want and return them. But once it did that, it built a customer-centric company that focused on solving any problems and any issues that they may have, including solving problems that have nothing to do with shoes and their services. Talent management, critical for companies that are looking to grow and enter new areas, especially with innovation. And what they're trying to do is hire new people, train the people to move forward. 10 years ago, we didn't have as many CLOs, Chief Learning Officers, as we do today, whose focus is on looking at these leadership themes and making sure the companies are able to pull it and train the leaders to be able to move up the chain of command so that they can be senior leaders making a real difference. Each company goes through a different one at a different time, and the key is for us to understand what their goals are. The fourth issue is to have the courage of your convictions. This is a wonderful section because I get to really think when we put this presentation together, some people who've thought it through and done some really great things. I'll just share a few with you. This is Ken Chenault of American Express, and I think he's got it. In a crisis, you can't manage by manual. You have to manage by values and beliefs, and that's really what it's all about, having the right value and belief. Now, we're going to see the fallout from Jamie Dimon and J.P. Morgan Chase's $2.2 billion loss that it just went through, but I think the fact that he tried to take accountability for it right away is a critical step in why the push to normally get rid of a CEO who's had this kind of catastrophe on his watch may not be there. A lot of other reasons as well, but that may be part of it, that he immediately fessed up to it, took accountability, took responsibility for it, and given that he's got so many great idiosyncratic credits and having done good things, may survive this storm. Courage is facing danger with confidence. It's understanding your capabilities, that's self-possession, and being resolved that whatever it takes, you're going to produce it. And that's really it. There are companies, every one of our companies at the Presentation Option Group, that's kind of our mantra. Whatever it takes to help the customer get what they need, we're going to figure out a way to do it if it's humanly possible and make those goals work. And there are other people that we know that are excellent at that and have done that. One is Steve Jobs again. You know, he's done it by getting his heart and his intuition together in terms of design, in terms of the future of so many industries today when you think about it. It's not just technology and computing, it's entertainment, it's telephony, etc. And I think his adage was something we can obviously all learn from now, especially that your time is limited. So what you need to do is have the courage of your heart and intuition. And somehow he believes they know what you're going to become, and that's really what it's about. So follow your heart, follow your passion, and become a leader that really has the courage of your conviction. Another wonderful example of that, obviously, is Oprah, who not only has the courage to stand for what she wants to do, but every time she does it, she's demonstrating something we like to call a leader presence, where she's clearly communicating her sense of purpose, her values, and practicing them, demonstrating integrity in her actions, trustworthiness, something, again, that's interactive, and integrity. These are all interactive if you think about it. Leadership is not about a silo, a single person. It's about a combination, a dyad at the minimum or a group at the maximum, where one person's relating to other people. You're taking bold actions ultimately, but with calculated risks. But you're always being true to yourself and your value system. In other words, you're going to walk the talk. And finally, the last part is about continuity and sustainability. For this one, we've chosen Martha Stewart because she went through a major set of issues, as we know, that may or may not relate to issues of integrity, etc. But the point was, when she looked at her company and she wanted to do right by it, she said, I always hire people who I think have the potential to take my job at some point. In other words, what key leaders have always done is look for people who could replace him. When Jack Welch was looking for the successor, he had 6 people all vying for that position. And I believe the assessment is not one of them wouldn't have been qualified to have made a really great CEO for General Electric. And that's the point. He had built a bench over 20 years that was that solid. And those who didn't get it have moved on, as we all know, Boeing, Ford, all kinds of companies where they've made tremendous contribution because, again, continuity and sustainability is having leaders who can fill in and take over and run the company the way you envision it for your own power to have your legacy realized in terms of what you're trying to do. So to empower for sustainability, you're looking at top management, top talent management, and what you're trying to do is build the systems to support them. So it's organizational structures. So when NASA was first created, as Sales and Chandler write about in 1969, it focused on an entirely new organizational structure called matrix management, something used by many companies, especially in the Fortune 500 today. A different structure that permitted more give and take, and that made a big difference. You want to use the systems, team-building approaches, cultural values, technology. All of those are tools that empower people for sustainability, and that's the ultimate goal if you want to be an effective leader. It's not just about today, it's about the day after tomorrow. But there's a second part of that. How do you know it works? So what you want to do is use accountability systems to be able to do it. You want to build decision dashboards where you're looking at the numbers and you're figuring out where it is. You want objective feedback. You want to involve all the relevant stakeholders. You want to focus on what you're doing and being able to change it. One of the new companies in our group is called Eval to Win, and you can go to eval2win.com. You'll see it at the last slide. And what we like about it is it deals with this issue of sustainability so nicely. As I said, there's one company who invented it and has been using it. 20% cumulative annual growth rate for the last 5 years in a terrible industry, by the way, demonstrates the power of it. Because what you're really doing is you're building a corporate ecosystem focused on winning, where every employee understands that if they follow the mission, vision, values, and goals of the company wins and they win. And the beauty of the tool set is it's a dashboard where you can evaluate progress every month, every 3 months, every 6 months, whatever unit you want. We recommend every 3 months as a minimum because it allows people to see it. And it's just great because you can take people and see where their leadership goals should be for the next, let's say, year or two, break them down into smaller units, and then see how they improve and go not just from a are you okay, 0, 1, 2 kind of scale to a 1 to 10 scale where you can really measure the difference between a 6 and an 8 because there is a fine difference and people understand it. More information, you'll contact us and we'll do it. And once you've built that kind of team where you have the right people, you have to align them. And that's the beauty, again, of a Vow to Win. It looks at culture, alignment, leadership, and performance and how they all interact with it. And I think that's the key. Great communication aligns the team. People know what the purpose is. They're going to hire people who are consistent with that purpose. What they do is make sure that the goals every day that they go to work for are consistent with the mission. And what they're doing is they're fostering a community where everyone is thinking kind of the same way. And I don't mean that from a boring point of view, but I mean in terms of the value system you have to, let's say, inspire and encourage creativity, inspire innovation, be sensitive to cultural diversity, issues like that, and reinforce them on an ongoing basis. So now let's try to put it together, what I've called the winning corporate ecosystem. It's one in which the leaders have a clarity of purpose. They know exactly where they want everyone to go, and they get everyone to focus on it. A Vow to Win actually cascades it from the top to the bottom of a company. They have communication excellence. They're inspiring all the people to go after the best of the company has to offer, motivating them through compensation systems, aligning them so the silo problem doesn't appear, and reinforce the action of the teams so that you get a synergistic effect. New book out on called The Synergist is that whole point. How do you put people to get 1 and 1 equals 3? You commit to your leadership theme, which again is critical for your time of what you're trying to aim at and get people to go there. You are going to have to face the fact that there are going to be tough times. And when you have that, it's the courage of your convictions. It's being authentic, showing what your belief system is, and exuding confidence that if you do it, it's going to make a difference, that you're projecting what we call a leader presence. And that inspires people, especially who are not sure which way to go, that maybe you know what you're doing and that's the right way to move. And finally, with that kind of positive air within the entire company, what you're doing is creating a long growth pattern that everybody can follow, that allows the company to go from good to great and stay great, and that's really the goal. Now, how do you get people to do this? How? Well, one answer is to engage them in deliberate practice, and that is, with the world so complex right now, is you need to start teaching people about some of these issues and let them simulate some of the issues that are coming up and try to figure it out and learn patterns of behavior internally and externally that they can work together to make the difference. So they need to have high info IQ, which means external awareness of what's happening outside. They have to have an effective decision-making architecture, which means when teams get together, they get together around the right reasons for only the amount of time necessary to be able to make a good joint decision. So death by meetings is not an answer. That's not effective decision-making. But meetings, whether it's a town hall meeting or a collaborative meeting or a Skype meeting in a virtual world, that's focusing and making sure everyone is both from a logic and emotional point of view in sync is the critical thing to do. And then make sure that information is disseminated through the other people. What you also want to do is test people's leadership IQ. You want to be able to look at emotional IQ, leadership IQ, and try to find out, can they process information quickly? Can they make good decisions? Can they implement them effectively? Again, courage of convictions, good planning, it all fits together. And can they integrate the feedback they get, evaluating it, to use them to make better results going forward? That's the goal. And again, tools like A Vow to Win are just one way of doing that. And so one of the things we've decided we'd like to do is through these webinars give you an opportunity to learn about these things and ask and contact us and try to come up at the end of today with some concrete plans that you're going to take to help move your team to the next level of leadership so that they're better and sharper. One answer might be using A Vow to Win to be able to go through the process of articulating the vision, the mission, the values, and the goals of your company. And then when you have them all down, cascade them from the CEO to the local team leader, making sure everyone's in sync and aligned around performance, and then engage people in it. And what it really does is transforms each of the managers and leaders into not just someone who communicates the goals and the values, but also into a coach. Because now they have an obligation of meeting with their workers the goals that they've set up and the values they've set up, and to do it and to accomplish them, they need to coach them on a regular basis. We said we're going to include in sales, for example, a greater number of new prospects for the new product that we're doing. The numbers show we're not doing it. What's the problem? Let's go through it. Are you in a comfort zone and you're not getting it out? It's that whole process of practicing the problem, the issues, what we call deliberate practice, and then providing meaningful coaching, mentoring for collaboration. A final thought. A leader must have the courage to lead, the patience to consult, and the wisdom to know when the time is right for each. And so that's a really good way of understanding this is not easy, it's complex, and we have to put it together. And cultivating effective leaders to do that requires cultivating them in yourself first. So that's one of the reasons, again, I like Eval to Win, because it asks you about your own values and your own goals, and asks you, as a CEO, to put yourself down with the board or with your own management and make sure that you're all in sync in what you're doing. So it's cascading down for everybody. What are the issues that we need to address? And with that, I want to thank you today for joining us. Presentation Excellence, as you know, has been around over a decade, helping over 5,000 people through its predecessor, Brilliant Image, producing great presentations. But through all of our learning, what we've become is a strategic leadership and business development group offering executive coaching. And just recently, we've created something called the Presentation Excellence Group, consisting of Presentation Excellence, Webinar Excellence, Vistage New York, because we're part of the Vistage community, and CEOs, sales leaders, or trusted advisors, they may want to join one of our local groups. Eval to Win, the newest member of our group, which I'm very excited about, as you can see. Leader Solutions, where we like to give every great leader who's done something nice and wants to help other people adopt the same lessons they've learned, 15 minutes of fame. And our new strategic partner, Commanding Strategies, which focuses on either consulting or facilitating management meetings, leadership meetings, so that they can define where they want leadership to go and make sure that they're held accountable. Feel free at any point to visit any of our websites.